Welcome back to Rising. I am eager to learn. Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
We have a lot to talk about. So, public media is under serious threat. Right now, Republican lawmakers are pushing a plan that could strip over $1 billion in funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a move that would devastate local stations, especially in rural America. Here's what's happening. The Senate is about to vote on a recessions package, meaning it will vote to formalize some of the cuts made by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Now, if it passes, funding for public broadcasting dries up. Full stop. And while NPR and PBS might survive in major cities, small town stations, the ones that rely on federal grants, could vanish. These are communities where public radio is not a luxury. It's the only source for local news, education, content, even emergency alerts. 70% of CPB's budget directly funds more than 1,500 local stations. Take that away, and many simply can't keep their lights on. This push isn't random. It's part of a decades-long conservative effort to gut public media, now supercharged by Donald Trump. Public broadcasting leaders call this the most serious threat they've ever faced. And they're not exaggerating. This is not just about Sesame Street or PBS NewsHour. It's about silencing local voices across America. We're standing at a crossroads. If this passes, hundreds of stations could go dark by the fall. And once you shut down the news, you shut down the truth. But let's be honest, this fight is not about public broadcasting. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We're witnessing a broader assault on journalism itself. This isn't about budgets, it's about control. Public broadcasters are some of the last trusted, unbiased sources of news in many places. Defunding them doesn't just cut TV shows, it dismantles community lifelines. I told you, these stations provide emergency updates during storms, wildfire warnings, even Amber Alerts. Critics claim public media leans liberal. I disagree. What does it mean, any of this criticism? It's saying that criticizing Trump is unacceptable. Journalists should be free to speak truth to power, even when the powerful don't like it. Meanwhile, media power is consolidating. Corporate deals tied to politics are reshaping major outlets. We're seeing billionaires push papers like the Washington Post towards MAGA-aligned narratives, while longtime journalists just straight up quit. Small-town newspapers face legal threats for just reporting poll results. And don't forget, the Associated Press got banned from the White House for refusing to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. If public media falls, what's next? National outlets are under pressure. Local journalism is dying. Killing NPR and PBS isn't a budget cut. It's a step towards dismantling the free press itself. And without a free press, democracy doesn't stand a chance.
Oh, dear me.
Oh, wow.
I
feel strongly about journalism.
I feel strongly about
I feel strongly about that. That's ridiculous. So, and I didn't even get to really touch on the impacts that Sesame Street and some of the educational programming has for kids that are underserved, so they don't have access. Like, it's a privilege for us to have access
to the internet.
They don't have access to the internet. No, this was an issue during COVID, which you have to be aware of. I think when you have the luxury of basic things, it makes it so that you think everyone does. But some people in America were not able to do things like, when they weren't able to go to school, get lunch and access the internet at all, which put them at a huge detriment when it was COVID, and you saw the disparities within America itself. So we know that that's true.
Even people
weren't able
to,
because they weren't able to access the library. How do you get there if your parents must work and you have no car? They don't have Uber. Like, these are all luxuries that we think are basic things that most Americans
on your phone.
No, some kids don't have phones, Robbie. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
The lucky ones don't.
That's I think we all speak from a place of, like, and I've lived in a lot of these cities on the outskirts of America where, of course, you have cable. Of course, you have options for free TV. Some people don't even have a TV, so they listen to public free radio. There's so many things that some of these stations like NPR and PBS use to get information out there, like those Amber Alerts, weather alerts, and important information, not just the Sesame Street, but it also is an educational tool for young kids that don't have access, the same access to all the Miss Rachels and YouTube and everything else that everyone can watch.
I find it strains my belief to think that most people can't have access to YouTube at all, which is a terrific repository now of not just news and information, but also children's programming. As far as PBS and NPR are concerned, look, I'm sorry, the market has to decide. If people value this product, they'll pay for it, they'll subscribe to it. That's fine. If there's really people who can't at all afford and have no access to children's programming or news, then I would, it's a little bit unfathomable, but then I would solve that problem by just giving them money. I would just give them a voucher or part of the social safety net. My view of the social safety net, if we have to have it, is not about the government subsidizing products and services, but just giving money to people who need it directly. I don't think the government should be in the business of creating programming or funding programming. If we're going to have some kind of social safety net, we should do it as simply as possible. You just give money to people who need it. So that's how I would deal with the problem you're arriving at. Obviously, people should not be forced. I'm not saying PBS is necessarily biased. NPR is clearly ideologically far left progressive in terms of its cultural values. Americans, half of Americans are not cultural progressive, more probably. They don't want to pay for that. I don't see what, in the same sense that I would never ask you, Lindsey, to subsidize Fox News or Newsmax or the Robbie YouTube show for Reason Magazine. No, it's the exact same thing. It is 100% the exact same thing.
No, I also think
it is a lie that NPR is neutral, but Fox News is biased.
When you're saying, like, cut off PBS and NPR, and you're saying cut people checks instead,
yes,
right? I think the reason for the government subsidizing certain programs like medical care or like access to informational programming is because if you give somebody a $10,000 check, does that mean they're going to go spend it on the actual thing that's necessary to build your education, the information you need to know how to move about your day? No, people are probably going to spend it on basic needs, getting that extra dinner that they wanted to get, doing something nice for themselves.
Well, they should. Then they should. If they value the dinner more than Sesame Street, that is how they should spend the money.
No,
it's paternalistic to pretend you know what's good for them more than they do.
Providing the option and making it equally accessible. You want the whole of America to be on a playing field that's actually level so people can have the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Some of that requires education, understanding, information. And so these services and medical care, some of these, this all is necessary to build your livelihood. And so it's not going to always be up to the children to make that choice if their parents receiving the money for them. Like you said, they don't have the autonomy to be like, oh yeah, get that educational programming. No, they're all going to be like, okay, let's go to the water park. Like, okay, that's also fine. But I think that there's value in having some of these programs lined up so that people are actually using the dollars for things that are necessary towards building and growing them in a way that's positive to our whole society.
This is coming down to a pretty stark different worldview philosophically here. I don't know what's good for other people and their families. I don't want to structure, here's how much money you should be spending on food versus how much money on children's entertainment versus how much time in the water park. You know what? It's none of my business. I don't know. And I think every family is different. Some should go to the water park more. Some should get a TV subscription. I don't know. It's none of my business. It's certainly none of the government's business. And so if they're desperately poor and we need help, we'll have a government that provides we have agreed basically to provide some level of support to people who need it. I think the simplest way should just be in the form of direct cash payments. And that's much better than trying to get into social engineering of, here is how much Big Bird the government, think you need in your life, which is just obviously ridiculous.
And what incentive would the American public have to trust that once these funds are cut and the DOGE cuts are solidified, that President Trump will then go back and say, yes, let's give each family, the poorest of America, this X dollars each check. I don't believe that he's going to do that, especially when the goal is cutting. No, he has to pay for this huge, big, beautiful bill. He has to make it make sense and balance the budget. He's not going to give to the most vulnerable populations because that's never been what he did. So that's not going to start tomorrow. So why would, if we're going to have something positive that people can access that are lesser fortunate in the middle of the country, why would we take that away and replace it with nothing? Because that's what's going to happen.
I think most of them can get Miss Rachel one way or the other.
Oh my gosh. Next up, former President Biden is addressing the Republican furor over his auto pen usage. Stay with us.